The real chain in this video is not the metal. It is the promise that almost any discomfort becomes reasonable if the prize is large enough. The central claim is that 30 days chained to a stranger reveals resilience and human connection. My question is whether the video actually proves that, or whether it mostly proves how powerfully $250,000 changes people's willingness to tolerate almost anything. Right from the opening, the challenge is presented as almost absurd. Survive 30 days chained to a random stranger. That framing matters because it encourages us to interpret every argument, compromise, and emotional moment as evidence about personality. But the experiment is never just about personality. It is about incentives. When the reward is extraordinary, normal behavior stops being a reliable baseline. The early domestic scenes are actually the strongest evidence the video has. Sharing meals, negotiating space, and learning routines create believable friction because those problems are ordinary. The challenge works best when it stops trying to be spectacular and simply observes two strangers forced into constant cooperation. Wait, this is where the evidence gets interesting. The video quietly assumes that lasting the full month demonstrates compatibility or emotional growth. It might, but another interpretation is just as plausible. Participants become experts at suppressing conflict because quitting is financially expensive. Those are very different conclusions. As the days progress, the challenge expands into public outings, unfamiliar environments, and constant visibility. Those moments increase pressure, but they also make it harder to separate authentic reactions from strategic ones. The audience is invited to celebrate endurance without asking how much of that endurance belongs to the people and how much belongs to the prize waiting at the finish. The strongest part of the argument is also its biggest vulnerability. The video repeatedly demonstrates that cooperation matters. That is convincing. What it never demonstrates is that forced cooperation under exceptional financial pressure tells us much about everyday relationships. It is a fascinating spectacle, but a limited social experiment. Even the increasingly extravagant settings reinforce that tension. Luxury locations and escalating scenarios keep the challenge visually fresh, but they also shift attention away from the psychological question introduced at the beginning. The spectacle becomes the evidence, even though spectacle cannot answer the original claim. What stayed with me was not the expensive logistics. It was the quiet realization that people rapidly renegotiate personal boundaries when they believe suffering has a measurable payoff. That observation feels more important than whether the contestants actually liked each other by the end. To the video's credit, it does not rely entirely on narration to sell the idea. It repeatedly shows awkward conversations, fatigue, and the slow accumulation of tiny compromises. Those moments are persuasive because they are allowed to breathe instead of being explained away. That is where the premise feels most honest. So my verdict is that the conclusion is only partly supported. The video successfully demonstrates that people can adapt under extraordinary incentives. It does not convincingly demonstrate what that adaptation says about trust, compatibility, or character outside this manufactured environment. That distinction matters more than the challenge itself. Short version, impressive experiment, debatable interpretation. If you like reviews that spend less time reacting to spectacle and more time dissecting the emotional machinery underneath it, you'll probably enjoy what's coming next.